Now, he's offered a very special relationship, instant visas for businessmen and reassurances that his personal batting skills pose no threat whatever. But on tour in India, what do David Cameron and his 100-strong entourage of British captains of industry want in return? Business is the answer, big or small, government or private. But will India play ball, so to speak? Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, sat down with the Prime Minister to find out. A warning, his report does contain some flash photography.
It's the reception politicians dream of, and he can dream on. The adulation was for Amir Khan, Bollywood superstar and campaigner on Indian women's rights. He joined David Cameron on a trip to a girls' college in Delhi. There were no shrieks when Mr. Cameron met the Indian Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh. If he'd been listening to David Cameron's pleas for a special relationship this week, it wasn't entirely obvious. Mr. Singh chose to talk about Britain's rigid visa system and bribery allegations against the British helicopter manufacturer Augusta Westland.
I have sought full assistance from the UK in this case. Prime Minister David Cameron has assured me of the cooperation of his government in the investigation.
David Cameron emphasised that the allegations were against the helicopter manufacturer's Italian parent company. He said Indians could be confident that Britain had amongst the toughest anti-bribery laws in the world. Some in the Prime Minister's entourage suggested the Indian Prime Minister was simply playing to his domestic gallery. Two-thirds of the way into this trip, Number 10's already boasting of new link-ups with British and Indian universities, as some sort of breakthrough for British investors into the Indian financial services market. I spoke to the Prime Minister just after his meeting with the Indian Prime Minister, and I put it to him, was he quite sure that the interest and affection was mutual? Just listening to that press conference just now with Prime Minister Singh, do you ever get the impression that you've come here rather like some sort of bad internet dating agency looking for a serious long-term relationship, and India's not looking for the same thing at all?
No, not at all. What I heard from the Indian Prime Minister and what I've heard from Indian business is they are mad keen to invest even more in the UK economy, where already, Indian companies are making cars, rolling steel, refining crude oil. So there's an enormous appetite. The Indians are pressing us to make sure it's easier to travel and work and study in Britain. And they want British companies providing the universities of the future, the healthcare systems of the future, and their transport corridors. So I find from Prime Minister Singh downwards an enormous enthusiasm.
But we're not doing quite as well as we might. Other people are doing better on some measurements. Do you think to some extent that's because you whistle a certain tune at home, whether it's on Europe or on immigration, and then you come here and reap the consequences?
I don't accept that. I mean, the figures just don't show that at all. More than half of Indian investment into the European Union comes to Britain.
Yes, but they're getting nervous now. You've just given a speech
not at all. No, but
putting uncertainty into our relationship with Europe, and they're saying they're nervous.
I don't sense that at all.
More
than half of the investment coming in comes to Britain. They're not choosing Britain for the weather. They're choosing it because we've got a skilled workforce, our access to European markets, our business-friendly government, our low rates of corporate tax.
You haven't made our relationship with Europe more uncertain. You have, haven't you?
No, I believe that what we've done is set out a strategy for reforming Europe and keeping Britain in Europe. And the major business leaders like Ratan Tata and Mukesh Ambani of Reliance have repeated that back to me. They're very enthusiastic about the investments that they make.
Just before you came here, you were in Eastleigh beating the drum on the immigration issue. And we're finding, talking to people, you must be finding it as well, one of the reasons the number of students from India, you want them to come, aren't coming to Britain in quite the numbers they were. There's been a serious plummet just recently, is in part because of the tone of that immigration debate. They don't feel welcome.
I don't really accept that either. I've been talking to the students here and they recognise that you've got to have a controlled and managed immigration policy, but they recognise we're making a very generous offer and saying there's no limit on the number of students from India who can come and study at British universities.
No mixed messages?
No, because they understand that there was a system in place that we inherited where we had 180 bogus colleges that weren't teaching students, they were just allowing them to work in the economy in unskilled jobs. So yes, of course, it's complicated to scrap bogus colleges over here and expand your proper universities over here, but it's the right thing to do.
Some people would say there's a different message on history as well being taught. Here you are here with a certain message on the history of our relationship with India, and then back at home, there's Michael Gove, the Education Secretary, wanting to put heroes of Britain in the curriculum, starting with Clive of India. I doubt that get a great reception here.
Well, I think we can be very proud of our history in terms of what we've done in the past. Of course, there are episodes that are, not good, but on the whole, I think the British contribution here in India is recognised. But the point is...
Recognised here? Is it helping our relationship, or is it actually helping people like France that they didn't have that history?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, if you look at what Britain brought and invested in and gave to India, those things are still appreciated. But the point about the British government is we're not sitting back on our laurels and saying, well, because of history, language, culture, people will choose to invest in Britain. We've got to get out there and make the case.
A big story back at home that's just broken. The man who's been heading off Gen for years is saying that we're at the top of a roller coaster on energy. We're about to go downhill very fast, and costs to the consumers will go up very fast. Is he right?
Well, what we're doing is a massive investment in the energy infrastructure of Britain.
Yeah, but is he right?
Well, what is not right is to argue that somehow we're going to be constrained in our capacity. We have plans to expand the nuclear industry, we have plans for renewable industry, we have plans to make available additional gas capacity if necessary. All of that investment is set out in our energy bill and in our approach. So I don't think there is a concern there. My concern is to make sure at the same time as that we keep costs down for consumers, which is why we're going to legislate to make sure that energy providers put customers onto the lowest tariff.
Just as we left home, Labour started playing footsie on the mansion tax with the Liberal Democrats. You know Nick Clegg well, you've come to know him. Could you ever imagine him in coalition with Labour?
Well, that's a matter for him to answer.
No, I just wondered what you thought.
Well, it's enough running one coalition without trying to work out what another one would be. I know I can work with Nick Clegg and deliver good government for Britain. That's what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years. That's what I'm going to go on doing for the rest of this Parliament. But in the next Parliament, I want to be a Conservative Prime Minister of a Conservative government.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.